Right. Um, Good morning. Well, good morning for me. I'm going to stream the same chapters again. Hopefully now it will be clear when I'm speaking. Again, sorry for the shyness and maybe my mistakes when I'm speaking. I'm still not very used to this voiceover. I'm a bit shy about it, but I'll do my best. Thank you. Okay. Forget my husband. I'll go make money. Chapter 1. You must be very shy. 1. I'm finally free. Aristine barely stopped herself from cheering out loud. She had finally gotten away from her sickening country, and even more sickening father. He's definitely crazy. Her father, the emperor, tortured her in all sorts of ways, using the justification of torturing her into a success. I really thought I died in that fire. The first thing she felt back then was the burning air, not the heat. Aristine had woken up to the sensation of something scraping her lungs and throat. If she had woken up just a little later, she would have died in her sleep. When she opened her eyes, she was surrounded by flames, and the windows were blocked off. At the time, Aristine was only 6 years old. A normal person would have died, but Aristine survived. That is, if you could call that survival. She was sharp black like a chunk of meat, yet her father looked at her young self and asked, "How did it go? Did you awaken?" Aristine, who was blankly staring at her father in confusion, realized, father was the one who set the fire and blocked the windows. That realization hurt her more than her scorched lungs and the blisters that had begun to form on her legs and arms. It hurt so much that she wanted it all to burn. I don't think it will hurt any more when my heart turns to ashes. And now, more than 10 years later, Aristine's heart had burned completely into ashes. After the incident with her half-sister, Aristine had even been confined. Since she was locked up as a young child, she lived on her own for more than 10 years, so it was strange to feel her heart beating with excitement. Then again, I was able to see my past life thanks to the confinement, so maybe there was one good thing about this. Aristine's mind unlocked its potential to protect herself. She became able to see her past life, otherwise she would have gone mad. It's nice to finally leave, but it will be a little annoying later. Aristine gave a faint sigh as she thought of her older blood brother, who wasn't in the palace right now. Either way, now wasn't the time to think about the place she was leaving. She should be thinking about the place where she was heading to. I wonder what kind of place Irigo is. The land of barbarians. A place where fire and iron rule. An isolated plain surrounded by demonic beasts. The Irigo barbarians mate with both beasts and humans. You can't even call them human. You will be in bed with a bastard who rolls around with demonic beasts. Who knows? He might prefer the beast to your stiff self. The words her father whispered to her echoed in her ears again. Certainly, a part it was because he wanted to spook curses on Aristine's marriage. But the emperor had always hated Irigo. Silvanus and Irigo have not had a good relationship for generations. Silvanus was very proud of the nations he had conquered, but there was only one place he couldn't invade, Irigo. Aristine's father, the Karen emperor, came up with a grand plan to bring Irigo to their knees. However, the direction of the war took a strange turn, and Irigo began to swallow up Silvanus' land instead. The person who made the greatest contribution to Irigo's success was none other than Tarkan, my future husband. Aristine recalled the target of her arranged marriage. The emperor proposed a ceasefire with Irigo when the Car realized that a further continuation of the war would only result in a loss. And in response, Irigo's king demanded enormous war reparations and one more thing. The emperor's direct bloodline must marry Tarkan. The arranged marriage was meant to represent an end to the 100 years of hostility and the birth of a new alliance. The king of Irigo truly wanted the war to end, because Irigo was surrounded by demonic beasts, so continuing the war would put a great burden on them. This was a story that would normally end with the saying, "And there was peace between the two nations." But my father never intended to let the war end. The only reason the emperor negotiated for a ceasefire was to buy time. For now, he wanted to break Irigo's streak, whatever. Then he planned to prepare for war behind the scenes before trying to invade again. And that's why he sent me. I'm a discarded hand. Something to give enough justification to declare war on a nation they had entered a marriage alliance from. There were many things they could easily cook up to achieve that, but there was only one thing that suited the emperor's taste: killing me and blaming me for Irigo, and blaming Irigo for it. Aristine loved inside the shaking carriage. Did the emperor know that the discarded hand he sent to die would send back a gigantic "fuck you"? But to achieve that, she needed one person's cooperation first: Tarkan. Aristine quietly recited the name of the person who would become her husband. That's the end of chapter 2. Chapter 1, my bad. Now I'll continue reading to chapter 3. The name is You Must Be Very Shy, Part 2. What game are they playing now? Aristine quietly stared at the simple tea table laid out before her. She already knew something was up when they set out with an old-fashioned carriage instead of using a portal. Sure enough, she was right, because she was unable to get out of the carriage for almost 10 days. I can't even feel my legs now. Because of that, she couldn't even wash up or change her clothes. She tried to at least take off her uncomfortable dress, but the knights kept knocking on her window, so she couldn't even do that. But then, they suddenly told her that she could come, kind of a bad translation here, that she could come out when she did. They claimed to have prepared a few refreshments for her. It would be weirder if I wasn't suspicious. Have a seat. The maids were polite, but with her tone and attitude, it was practically an order. However, Aristine sat down without saying anything. Not yet. She was still acting as docile as she usually was in the palace. It is not time yet. Aristine's eyes swept over the armed escorts. Who knew whether they were guards, surveillance, or assassins? Regardless of who they were, the empire had only just begun reorganizing, so it needed time, which meant it was not yet time for Aristine to die. But in a way, that also meant they could do anything to her apart from killing her. Ironically, Aristine, a princess of Sylvanus, could only be protected when she arrived in Irigo, an enemy nation. Although time will only tell if I truly will be protected. Aristine stared into the teacup, which was filled with black tea. Its shaky surface reflected Aristine's composed face. She was yet to even touch the teacup, but the surface of the liquid kept wobbling, and soon Aristine's reflected face disappeared completely from its surface. And in its place, was a different sight. The sign reflected on the surface was that of a handmaid, who had just ordered Aristine to sit down. Her attire was exactly the same as it was now. Unlike Aristine, the maid was able to wash up and change clothes every day, so she was far more clean and groomed. The maid was moving a pot of boiling water. Her destination was the tea table, or Aristine to be more precise. Inside the surface, the handmaid poured the boiling water on Aristine. Aristine's burned face swelled up with redness. "Oh no, I'm sorry, princess." Despite what she said, the maid's face was full of obvious ridicule. Her hands were rough and harsh as she wiped Aristine's face with a cold towel. Her actions seemed to make the injuries worse instead. "Wow, she looks like a drenched rat." It's the perfect look for a barbarian's bride. The other maids, a little further away, giggled and whispered among themselves, as if they wanted Aristine to hear it. The surface shook, and it soon fell silent. The scene from just now vanished into thin air, and Aristine's calm face was the only thing reflected back. Just like it had been in the beginning, this was Aristine's ability. The ability her father, the emperor, desired so much. But it was the ability he thought Aristine failed to obtain. The reason why she couldn't be considered a success and ended up as a failure. The Monarch sight, which manifested through a mirroring surface, it wasn't just an ability to see into the future. Aristine could see the future, past, and present. Through a surface, however, Aristine wasn't able to see things just because she wanted to, and just because she didn't want to see something, didn't mean it wouldn't be shown to her. In other words, she could not control it. What shall I do? Tap, tap, tap. Aristine's indeed finger slowly tapped on the table. She could see the handmaid approaching out of the corner of her eye, carrying the boiling water. For a brief moment, Aristine's eyes went on alert. As soon as the maid got right next to her, Aristine sprang her feet. "Ah!" The maid screamed, and she was doused in boiling water. When she saw the figure in front of her suddenly rise up, she reflexively stepped back, but because her center of gravity shifted, the water she was carrying ended up pouring on herself. The maid's face swelled and reddened in the blink of an eye. "Oh no," Aristine lamented, covering her mouth with her hand. My face! My face!" The other maids were shocked and hurriedly went to bring cold water. It was quite different from the scene she saw in the Monarch sight. After fussing over her for a while, one of the maids stood up and stomped over to Aristine. "What are you going to do about this? Why are you asking me?" When Aristine threw back a question in response, the maid Rosaline gasped in surprise. This scorned princess had the nerve to talk back to her now. "All I did was stand up," Aristine said. "That she poured the water on herself. You can't blame me for it. Am I supposed to act as a nanny for you guys?" Aristine. "Well, it does look like you guys need a nanny." This was much perfect. She omitted the snide remark she wanted to make, but the very slight lift at the corner of her mouth said a lot more than 100 words could. What did you just... If you need a nanny, you should have been careful." Aristine's tone was as if she was just informing her of the truth. Rosaline couldn't say anything in response. She was just so startled and taken aback. However, the thing that annoyed her the most right now was the fact that she couldn't think of any rebuttal to this damn bitch of all people. Her face heated up with humiliation. While Rosalind quieted down, Aristine down and sipped the black tea. Her back was as straight as a line, and the movement of her wrist as elegant as a swan. even though she hadn't been able to wash up or change her clothes for almost 10 days. She looks as if she couldn't She looked as if she couldn't be more relaxed. Ah. The maids were watching her, half in disbelief. They wondered if the person they were seeing right now was really the princess they knew. It wouldn't be accurate to say they knew the princess well, but she was that princess. You know? The nuisance who was shoved out of the emperor's sight and treated worse than strangers in the imperial family. The idiot who never got the chance to learn or be taught anything. A mentally unsound lunatic who had lived alone for most of her life. But, is this really that crazy princess? That didn't make any sense. This wasn't just different, it was different by a long shot. Right. You probably just guessed right this time. However, this was just only the beginning. End of chapter 2. Now we go to chapter 3. You must be very shy. What do we do, princess? These are the only clothes you can change into. Rosalind said to Aristine, her red lips in a twisted smile, although she made it sound like it was such a shame. Her eyes could not hide her delight. The other handmaids next to Rosalind giggled and waved the dress at her like they were showing it off. Rather than calling it a dress, it was more like a rag. The maids grew more excited when they saw Aristine stay silent, and chattered away. It's so dirty. What can we ever do? It's not like we can give the high and noble princess my old and humble clothing. Ah, but our dear princess likes wearing things like this, so I suppose it doesn't matter. I guess you're right. I mean, look at the clothes she's wearing now. I don't think she knows it smells. The princess has been wearing that the whole time, so she might just prefer this. Rosalind remarked as she grabbed the dress from the other maid's hand and threw it to the floor. They trampled it with their shoes, but you couldn't even see signs of it on the dress, because it was already dirty with soil and dust. Aristine looked down at the sight. So this is all they could come up with? A chuckle escaped her lips. I knew it. They're playing it safe. Aristine snatched the dress that the other maids were holding perfunctorily and turned around. What the? Unbelievable. They had run their mouths, but they didn't feel satisfied. Aristine ended up wearing dirty clothing like they wanted to, but somehow it felt like they were the ones who looked more ridiculous. After getting into the carriage, Aristine pulled the curtains and took off her suffocating dress. The only dress they had prepared for her for the sake of this arranged marriage was the one she was taking out right now. Because she had worn it throughout the rough carriage ride, it was now so scruffy that its original appearance was nowhere to be found. The sensitive and weak material had worn out very quickly. They wouldn't be able to wear it again. Aristine held up the dress the maid had trampled with her feet and threw it on. Both outfits were dirty anyway, and this one was more comfortable than that suffocating dress. The maids had sarcastically said she might prefer it, but they weren't exactly wrong. The maids had sarcastically said she might prefer it, but they weren't exactly wrong. Sorry, it came out twice. To think the worst they could do was to step on the dress. They had definitely gotten scared, although they wouldn't admit it to themselves. It was a good thing I retaliated. Initially, she planned on staying quiet till she arrived at Irigo. But when she saw them trying to pour hot water on her, she changed her mind. She felt she needed to put a sort of brake on the maid's harassment. If all she had done was avoid that water, things like that would have kept happening to her until she arrived. The Monarch site doesn't always work when I want it. So, if I left it like that, I might really get burned. So she responded by making sure the maid was completely scalded. And the psychological effect on her opponents was quite remarkable. It's not like the princess made the water spill on purpose. She just poured hot water on herself by mistake. The princess cannot defy us. She only made a few remarks. We can still treat her like nothing. Even as they thought that to themselves, they were unconsciously being careful. It's scary. The maid who tried to pour hot water on Aristine had half of her face riddled with burns. The burn wasn't that severe, so she could be fully treated when they arrived at Irigo. But right now, there was a huge blister on her face, and it was swollen like a red balloon. The maids would see that face every day and shrivel subconsciously. There were people who had never considered that they themselves could be hurt while harassing others. Then for the first time they realized, I could be hurt. They were more hesitant to bully or esteem than before. And that's why they could only do this safe act of spite. When you put boiling water next to trampling on someone's clothes, the latter seem cute in comparison. Most of all, Aristine wasn't affected by this sort of thing. She had been locked up for far too long to care about something like her outfit. That said, I really didn't know I only brought the dress I was wearing. Aristine, who had been confined by herself, only had old and shabby clothing. Even if the maids didn't step on that dress, her clothes were already inappropriate for a new bride to wear in a wedding carriage. Plus, it wasn't just any marriage, but a political marriage between two countries. It was likely the emperor's order to only prepare one dress for her. I can't tell what the emperor is thinking. He wanted to make her look as messy and pathetic as possible. By the time she arrived at Irigo, there would be a dazzling carriage, luxurious wedding gifts, guards in shiny armor, and beautiful maids. And in the midst of that, a princess who looked like a sewage rat. Such trash is only fitting for you barbarians, that kind of message, I guess. Unlike the princess who looked like a sewage rat, the luxuriously arranged accompaniment and expensive wedding gifts were meant to show Sylvanus' national power. And by extension, Aristine was used to mock Irigo. Unlike Irigo, who truly wanted the war to end, the emperor only wanted to buy time before launching another war. So she had no qualms about being so rude. Since he didn't care how Aristine would be treated in Irigo, there was nothing to bother him. No wonder I thought my marriage send-off was too fancy. He vaguely thought Irigo must have requested a lot of wedding gifts. Well, the things Irigo requested must be part of it too. His Majesty the Emperor can be so naive. Did he really think everything would go as he wished? To him, his foolish daughter, who couldn't get the Monarch sight, was confined from a young age, and was an idiot who knew nothing about the world, so he could use her and kill her as he liked. I'm sure I can get good clothes and wash up if I really want to. I will still lay down with a plop. But let's play along with this farce until we arrive. Retaliating against such little things was no fun. Only when it's done at unexpected times was it entertaining. That's the end of chapter 3. You know what? I might just... Nah, I think I'm done. I was gonna read one more. I think the video is long enough now. Thank you for hearing me. Sorry if my spelling is not that good, if I made some mistakes. But I'm a bit... I'm so human. I know I'm a bit human. I'm so human. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and support the original work. Thanks. Bye.